Good day, my friends. Froggy here, and welcome to my 2016 August 19th to 22nd Lake Louise to Jasper loop ride. Brian Smith, my good den friend, joined me and Christine on a wonderful and interesting journey. I start this vid with entering Hope, and Hope is always the first gas up traveling this easterly direction onto Highway 3 and the beginning of the Hope-Princeton Highway. After Hope on Highway 3, you travel up what they call 9 Mile Hill, and reaching the summit is the Nicklin Valley and the Johnson Ridge slope 17 kilometers east of Hope. At about 7 a.m. January 9th, 1965, there was to be the biggest landslide recorded in Canada's history so far. I remember it well because I was 9 years old living in Rosedale just outside of Hope at the time. There was actually two slides, first being the snow avalanche which stopped 3 motorists, 2 in one car, 1 in another car, and a tanker truck driver. Moments later, the second slide, the rock slide, with 48 million cubic meters of mud, rock, and debris, 85 meters deep and 3 kilometers wide, barreling down a 2,000 meter slope, burying all 4 people. 2 bodies were found, 2 remain entombed to this day. They don't really know what triggered the slides for sure, seismic or natural, but regardless, an awesome sight to see and remember. Continuing on through Sunshine Valley, up around Three Brothers Mountain, viewing parts of the Smilkameen River, some rock bluffs and tighter bends before hitting Manning Park. This is what happens next. I hear tires squeal, look in the mirror, and see an orange streak like lightning hitting the ditch. I'm thinking, holy shit. There was a pullout a couple hundred feet from the bend and was able to turn around safely. I whip back up and sure enough, Brian Smith, bang on, head on into the ditch between 2 cars traveling west. Few of the folks were at the scene, stopped and helped Brian get his Ural out, which was muchly appreciated for sure. It was hard to get a good footing, especially on the roadside bank, getting it up. The gravel was loose and fairly steep. I slipped a couple of times, being in front, pulling, and not a lot of room for all to help at the same time. Chris pointed out a little less grade a few feet up to try, and it was a little better and worked. A few more tugs trying to get in sync with all, and voila, back on the road. We clapped, cheered, and thanked all involved. Brian hopped onto the Ural, started it up no worries, and we headed down to the pullout to assess the damage.
Oh, we got her out.
The folks that helped were leaving. It was time to ponder. Most important, Brian seemed unscathed. Not a wrinkle or a button missing from his Hawaiian shirt. If hurt, he did not say.
Well, I heard a squeak, I looked behind you and I saw you just go straight.
I was lucky I just slotted right between those 2 cars, though.
Fuck, yeah, I know. I thought maybe possibly somebody hit you or something.
And then I saw the ditch and I thought, oh, this is going up. That's a goddamn ditch.
We checked the bike over, the left muffler detached from pipe, the clutch and brake levers twisted, the mirrors came loose. Those were easy fixes. The front forks, however, bent in 4 to 6 inches, something that could not be fixed. They both bent in equally, and surprised the tire and rim had no damage. Brian gave the muffler a final few kicks, and it was time to trundle on and test the beast again.
Okay, go ahead. Clear.
Traveling through Ellison Pass, which starts about 10 kilometers west of Manning Park, is a wonderful trek. They are improving the road, but still watch out for potholes and uneven sections. Ellison Pass has the highest summit at 1,345 meters between Hope and Princeton. This is actually the Crow's Nest Highway, aka Highway 3. Opening in 1949, it runs from Hope to Medicine Hat, Alberta. 1,161 kilometers in total length, with 838 of it being in BC. I got up beside Brian a bit before Manning Park's East Gate, a small cabin community with an Esso and convenience store. Looking close at the front forks, you'll see how bent back they are. Brian shrugged his shoulders and gestured that everything seems to be riding fine, which was absolutely great news. After Eastgate, you'll incline up to Sunday Summit, the second highest summit at 1,284 meters, transitioning from the Cascade Mountains to the Similkameen region and Copper Mountain, 20 kilometers south of Princeton. Copper was discovered here in 1884 and mined until 1958. Copper Mountain's town was abandoned shortly after. Historically, Princeton, originally Vermilion Forks, was a mining town of copper, gold, coal, and some platinum. Today's main industry is sawmilling. At Princeton, the second gas up stop and some needed rallies. The Brown Bridge pub is one of the most common stopped by bikers passing through. They got good food, good service, and an outside patio. Been to Brown Bridge pub many times, sometimes group rides, sometimes solo, before trundling on. Heading into the Similkameen River Valley, we pass through Headley, a frontier mining town with gold being the primary mineral. The Mascot mine digging high into the mountainside, driving 67 kilometers of tunnels between 1935 and 1949. The mine buildings still cling to the cliffs today. The Nickel Plate mine, where gold was discovered in 1898 and by 1903 digging 120 kilometers of tunnels. Building a tramway, 40 stamp mill, and building a second town on top of the mountain for 200. Nickel Plate mined underground till 1955, reopened in 1986, and worked as an open pit mine for another 10 years. The Headley Museum and Mascot Mine Museum display artifacts and photos from this era, and celebrate Stamp Mill Day on Saturday of the May long weekend. Speaking of the Similkameen River Valley is of course home to the Similkameen River running through southern BC. The river is about 197 kilometers long and starts on the east flank of Manning Park, 10 kilometers north of Elson Pass. It passes by towns as Eastgate, Princeton, Headley, Carameus, and Coston, then into the Okanagan River near Orville, Washington, stateside. You'll see horses amongst other creatures grazing and drinking riverside. I biked and tented along it one particular time, enjoying a music festival weekend in Princeton. The next town we hit is Carameus. Carameus' main industries are horticulture, agriculture, ranching, winemaking, and of course a couple of miles of fruit stands. Also, there's Carameus Creek that flows down from the upper benchlands to the Similkameen River and has one of the few remaining working grist mills in North America. Grist mills were used to grind grains into flour by way of a paddle wheel, or Norris wheel, as many were found in Scandinavia. The paddle wheel is attached to a shaft to turn a millstone against a stationary bed in similar shape and size. I'll be sure the next time passing through Carameus, a visit to the grist mill and gardens should be a must-see. I mentioned wineries, and just 8 kilometers past Carameus, 36 to Osoyoos, is Coston, named after a pioneer rancher who settled here in the 19th century. Along with produce, we traveled by a couple of vineyards and wineries. The Lieber Farm and Forbidden Fruit wineries are in close proximity, situated between Highway 3 and the Similkameen River. Passing by the rows of organic grapes and fruits used in their wines is neat to see. Other than grapes, and like wines from apple, pear, cherry, plum, and peaches, Forbidden Fruit Winery is the place to go. If you're a wine lover, stop into their tasting patios and/or pick up a bottle or two. Just up a bit from the Forbidden Fruit Winery is Nighthawk Road, heading south with only a couple of few kilometers to the Nighthawk border crossing and following the Similkameen River again to Orville or points beyond. Hitting the cut down towards the town of Osoyoos, situated on Osoyoos Lake. Osoyoos is the southernmost town in the Okanagan Valley, with the Okanagan River running through it. Osoyoos has a population of around 5,000, with hordes of people during the summer vacations, including myself back in the day camping and partying at the Inkameep campgrounds before the resort was built. The lake is an international lake, sharing with the United States down into Orville, Washington. Crossing a little bridge over the narrow section of the lake to the other side, people jump off regardless of the no jumping sign. They should change the sign to watch for boats when jumping. We whipped by having to double back to the Petrocan, the last gas station to top up, leaving Osoyoos. We took a little time for an ice cream break in the shade, chatted a bit. I suggested stopping at the Antarctic Mountain Lookout for some photos. All three of us agreed. After taking some pics of the Indian art figures that make this Petrocan stand out, we were ready to trundle on. Brian does have a bit of a bum leg to boot, but I think when he was taking a closer look at the ditch, he did give it a bit of a bang. An Arctic Mountain lookout is about 1,400 meters up. You'll have a panoramic view of Osoyoos Lake. They say that the lake looks like a snake winding its way through a valley, and I do tend to agree. After passing Osoyoos, we'll ride through what is called Boundary Country. Boundary Country is a large region in the southern interior, stretching west to east from Bridesville to Grand Forks. Also included is the Kettle Valley and Kettle River. We will follow the river passing through communities such as Rock Creek to Midway before it crosses stateside. As usual, passing by some towns, we don't see much. Rock Creek does have a large history during the gold rush days of the 1860s and was featured in a TV documentary series, Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. They have, like many, a yearly festival, Rock Creek's being Ponderosa Arts and Music, held in August. This is my second time riding through Midway this year. First, back in June, crossing Washington stateside, following the Kettle River to Krulu, then Republic for an overnighter. Midway also hosts a summer festival, the Groove Music Festival. I haven't seen a schedule for 2017 yet. In 1899 arrived the Canadian Pacific Railway, making Midway a center point for the distribution of ore. Now a local attraction with the Kettle Valley Museum and being mile zero to the Kettle Valley Rail Trail, a popular cycling trail following the old railroad. I wanted to stop into the museum, but the next town scheduled to visit was Greenwood. There is always another day. From Midway to Greenwood is only 11 minutes up the road. There were two reasons for stopping here. It was about 30 years ago on my Venture Royal, biking through to Selma with friends to a hog farm party. Also, still searching for a place to buy to continue his retirement, Brian wanted to check out the real estate window board. Greenwood was incorporated in 1897 and was one of the principal cities in Boundary Country for smelting and mining. Their copper smelter began operation in 1901, but by 1910 the copper boom passed with the end of World War I. By 1918 the market was dead and they permanently closed down, followed by the mines in the vicinity around Greenwood. Parts of the site still remain. The town was also featured in the TV series Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. Greenwood is an awesome town to visit, so take some time and stop in for a gander. We pulled into Deadwood Junction Cappuccino and Whatever Little Things bar at the beginning of town. Last time passing through, this place was a gas station, the old kind with a working garage, mechanic, and full service. You could get pop, juice, hot dogs, and smokies outside, but inside was another story. The first thing catching my eye was gelato, Italian for ice cream, made a little different, a little denser, and richer than typical ice cream. Not having it before, Chris and I had to have some. The place was decorated with all kinds of paintings and pictures, baked goods, and trinkets for sale. The tender, dressed in a top hat, vest, and bow tie, definitely added to the historic nature of Greenwood and their establishment. It was time to hit the main strip and take a peekaboo at what Remax Realty office may have to offer Brian. I think Brian was a little excited because he forgot he had a sidecar and ended up wrestling with a Jeep front tire for a parking spot. Although plenty of space, and after the ditch thing, Chris and I could not stop laughing. We all had a good chuckle. There was no damage, no fall, and all was good. I decided to take a walkabout for a few pictures in town before heading to Grand Forks, our first evening stay. Entering Grand Forks is also cool, coming down the hillside, viewing the valley. You can see by the long shadows it's getting on, and Grand Forks will be our first night's stay. Grand Forks is considered a city in the Boundary Country region. It's located at the confluence of the Granby and Kettle Rivers. Both are contributors to the Columbia. Grand Forks also had a copper smelting operation in the early 1900s, but closed their Phoenix copper mine in 1935. They still have remnants of large slag piles and smelting along the Granby River north side of town. Some of the slag piles are owned by Pacific Abrasives, who sells it to the U.S. Navy, ships it via rail to San Diego, and is used in sandblasting their ships. The stretch along number 3's main drag is fairly long, but a nice stroll with older buildings and treed sidewalks. Nearing the end, we cross over the Granby River, where it runs into the Kettle River just a few blocks south. I'm in search for the motel I booked, the Victorian Motel. I always try to stay somewhere more out of the loop, and always like my bike in front of the room. I booked the Victorian because the owners were friendly, good rates, ex-bikers to boot, with $5 off being one. After booking in, Brian comes out and hands me the Wi-Fi code. I mentioned I have a flip phone and had no need for one, but maybe Chris had a use for it, so I took it. We hopped on our rides and proceeded to our rooms. Chris had already got a key and was waiting. Sure enough, it was the perfect room, perfect spot, and being at the end for me was a bonus. The rooms were great, very clean, and a Victorian-style decor. The camping and RV park just behind the motel with the Kettle River running along it. If I had my rod, I could have caught something for the Barbie. Brian and I went back to town for some beer, Baileys, and cider so we could park, relax, and enjoy the evening. I took a little stroll through one of the city streets heading back. It was actually quite nice not having a lot of traffic and folks around to watch out for. Pulling back into the hotel, there were 3 other bikers as a group from the lower mainland, passing through, staying the night. It was great to mingle, share stories, drinks, and pizza before heading in for the night. I will leave this part 1 of a 4-day journey, Hope to Grand Forks, with some recap pics you may not have seen. Stay tuned for part 2. Thanks for watching.